If you want to keep great talent, here's the secret. You give them a way to grow, a chance to show, and a place to go.
Today, we're going to be talking with Bryan Howard of Peoplyst. Bryan, if you would, give us a little bit of color on your background and your business, and then we'll kick this into gear.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you for having me. Like you said, I'm Bryan Howard, CEO of Peoplyst. We're a workforce consulting firm, and we solve people problems for businesses that stand in the way of their success. I've been doing this for the better part of almost 30 years at this point, with lots of experience in all facets of HR, including hiring over 200,000 people during my career, training thousands of managers and leaders, and helping businesses from startups to Fortune 50 companies get their business on track and hit their business goals.
You don't look old enough to be in business 30 years, but I do look old enough to be there. So I will say that in general concept. One of the things that right now in this kind of environment, high turnover is killing growth. You're constantly turning over people instead of building momentum. It just rips up your company, tears you apart, expensive, and holding your business back. What do you do and how do you address that, Bryan, when you go into a company?
A lot of people think turnover is the issue, but turnover is not actually the issue. It's actually a symptom of a larger problem or the disease itself. Turnover is usually rooted in a few things. One could be leadership or management. You've heard the saying, people don't quit jobs, they quit managers. That's somewhat true. If the culture doesn't align with their values, there's a lot of talk about work from home and hybrid and in-person work right now. And so people are turning over because the company's not offering what they want. And then the last thing is really career growth. If you don't give people a place to go, then they'll go somewhere else. Our job at Peoplyst is to go in and identify the actual problem behind those symptoms of turnover and then help the companies chart a plan to fix that. And we're a roll up your sleeves type of company. So we don't just give you a PowerPoint deck and leave. We actually stay, help you implement the solution, and then help you build a sustainability plan after the fact so that you don't have to keep calling us back.
Well, talk a little bit about how do you keep your best people and build that real stability?
If you want to keep great talent, here's the secret. You give them a way to grow, a chance to show, and a place to go. So a way to grow is all about career opportunity. You can think of training, attending conferences, being able to job shadow other people, mentorship programs. Those are all ways to grow. And if you provide that to employees, the ones that want to stay with you will take advantage of them. And then you have to give them a chance to show. So it's not good enough that you train them and send them to seminars and do mentorship. You have to give them an opportunity to use those new skills, because skills are very much use it or lose it. If you don't give them an opportunity to use it, an opportunity to show off what they've learned, the skills will dissipate, and anything you gained or any engagement you gained from the growth opportunity will go away. And then finally, you have to give people a place to go. Most companies are a pyramid. As you get higher in the company, there's fewer and fewer places to go. So you have to be very purposeful about career paths, because if you teach them well and give them a chance to show you what they've learned, but you don't give them a path forward, then they'll go somewhere else. So a lot of companies have one or two of these, but very few companies have all three.
Talk about managers not leading and getting them into managing.
It's unfortunate in most companies that we visit. We see that most managers are stuck in task mode. The big reason for that is because managers are typically promoted by job skill. Well, they may not be the best manager. They may just be the best person at that skill. So now what you just did when you promoted that person is you lost your best person in that position and you promoted them into a job they may not even want. But people will take those jobs because it's more money and perhaps more prestige. But ultimately, it's not what they wanted to begin with. They manage using the same skills that they had on the job. Marshall Goldsmith wrote a great book towards the beginning of his career called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. That's exactly what happens with these managers. And then on top of it, they get thrown into the role with no real job training. They're expected to learn how to be a manager on the job, which is probably the least efficient way to do it. We believe in a three-step approach to manager training. The first is prepare people to be managers before they become managers. And there's two benefits to that. One, obviously, they can hit the ground running as a manager and do a lot better when they know how to do it. But the second thing is people who start training to be a manager beforehand often opt out of the process and say, wow, I didn't realize managers did all of this. They opt out and say, I don't want to be a manager. Don't make me a manager. Not only does that help them stay with the company, but it also helps them have more respect for the managers that they have. Then the second piece is once they become a manager, they have to have coaching. So how are you doing? Follow-up coaching. And then, of course, the third step would be more advanced training as they grow in the leadership roles. each level of management requires a different skill level. So it's a continuous training effort.
Either predictive index, culture index, Myers-Briggs, some of these types of things. And they're pretty darn good. We have an NLP certified person on our payroll, and I have that person listen in to interviews to help us identify, do they have that skill set, even if they want that job? What do you do, and how do you work with that to ensure that they're actually qualified to do that job?
The thing about assessments is they should be used as one point of data in making decisions. They're valuable and they do tell a good story, but they don't tell the whole story. So you just have to take that as one of the pieces that you use. And we tell people all the time, if you're already using an assessment, let's see how we can fit that into the hiring process in a way that makes sense and makes good decision making. If they're not using an assessment, then depending on the type of company, we'll suggest a few of them. And NLP is a great tool. My favorite assessment for managers is called the Kolbe A, spelled KOLBE-A. It's a great assessment that tells me about their preference for action. When there's a task to be done, how do they show up? And for me, that's a very important thing because it helps me build team fit. I wrote a book called The Vanguard Edge. I spend a whole chapter on model, talking about which assessments are best, how do you use them.
As you know, a good assessment along with NLP, you can see what the person really is as opposed to what they want you to believe they are. The next step of that is if you get the right person, are they the right culture? Typical one bad apple is an issue. And if you've got that, you're going to have a problem no matter what you do.
There was a study that was done, and the actual study's not coming to mind, but the results are, if you sit within 25 feet of a top performer, your performance will improve by 15% automatically. If you sit within 25 feet of a bottom performer, your performance will decrease by 30%. In some companies, the bar is excessively low, and I'm not a big fan of merit-based hiring. I also think that culture is an important measure, but there's two ways you can hire for culture. The first way is you can just have a yes or no, right? So yes, they fit our culture, or no, they don't. And then the second way, which I think is actually more valuable, is you can look at a person and say, how will this person add to our culture? How will this person make our culture better? Because one of the worst things you can do as a company is just hire a bunch of same as me people, because then you don't have the opportunity to innovate and grow, bring fresh ideas in. If everybody is the same, then all the ideas are the same. But sometimes differences are what drives innovation and creativity forward. A deal killer at Peoplyst is you have to have a people first value set, because that's how we run our company. That's how we advise our clients. Everything is people first. If I try to hire somebody who's profit first, as an example, that doesn't make them a bad person. There's lots of jobs where they will excel, but they won't do well here because that will clash with the direction of our company. So there are some things that are, deal killers, so to speak, but there's other places where values can be slightly different. And that difference is what helps drive the company forward. And for me, diversity is less about color or race or gender and more about experiences. That it's the old nature versus nurture argument. I grew up in a different place than you. We probably had different socioeconomic backgrounds, and all of the things that I have experienced in my life make me a different person than any of you. And so when I bring those experiences to the table and we're decision making, I'm going to have different ideas. So you can look at that as part of diversity too.
Absolutely. And I agree with that we're all going to have different backgrounds, but we're a Christian-based company that embraces all religions, all people. And if you're not familiar with the buffalo culture, the buffalo is the only animal in the animal kingdom that will charge the storm. If there's a problem, they will charge that storm, get through it as fast as possible. They go together, they protect each other, and they get through there. So I'm constantly looking for people that are herd-minded, company-minded, people-minded, and, oh, by the way, they have the skill set to do the job. One of the main things of that is you got to do it fast, because if you got good people out in the marketplace, what are your thoughts on having a program, having a system, and getting it done as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible?
I've hired over 200,000 people in my career. My teams have hired over 200,000 people. One of the things that we value more than anything is the length of time it takes from the moment the person applies until they sit in the seat. You can call it time to fill or whatever you want to call it. But to me, it's the way to get the best talent. The best talent talent doesn't always apply first. If you take too long to hire people, they'll go somewhere else. Now, some people would say there have been a lot of layoffs lately. It's more of an employer market right now than an employee market. And they would make that argument. But what I say to that is that you got to build good habits now, because the economy is cyclical and it will turn around. And if you're the company that hires slow, you'll be left with all the people that didn't get hired somewhere else. And that's never a good thing. Hiring process has to be slow enough to make good decisions, but not excessively slow. For example, if you do 14 interviews and 4 of them are panels before you hire somebody, then you're not getting the best talent because they've already gone somewhere else.
We recently had an interview with a controller for the company, and they got on the call, and their hair was pulled back, but not really brushed. They had a t-shirt top on with a jacket over it, but the t-shirt had a hole in the front of the shirt. I got off the call and I'm saying, okay, this person has on paper the skill set, but in the interview, do I want that person representing the company? That if that first impression is not good, you don't get a second chance. I want good people that present well, that have the skill set. What are your thoughts about getting your leaders to understand the problem and or come to one mindset prior to going through the hiring process?
Leaders often resist change. The saying that comes to mind is resistance is usually fear dressed up as logic. They'll give you a reason why they can't do this new process, whatever it is. But really what the problem is change. And so they're saying, how does this affect me? How does this change affect my standing in the organization, or my ability to grow and my ability to stay employed? The biggest thing that people can do, leaders and managers can do to make change resistance go away, or at least to minimize it, is to make sure that whatever they're doing is happening with their employees and not to their employees. If you involve people in the change process from the very beginning, you discuss the why, you ask for ideas, and when it comes time to make the change, they'll adopt it much more readily. But if you just tell people the decisions in the 11th hour and you say, this is the new path forward, then you're going to have all kinds of resistance, because that feels like it's happening to them and they actually feel assaulted by the change instead of a part of the change. A lot of companies will say, we can't be that transparent because there's too many risks. So we have to keep everything a secret to the last minute. The results are so much better once you do it. It feels really awkward and it's scary, but once you do it and it happens with people, the results are amazing.
One of the things that I did in my company when I was running a full company, bricks and mortar, I had every person in the company work in other department jobs. Senior management had to go on the sales floor. They had to work in the warehouse. They had to work in the front office, and vice versa. Everybody in the company had to work in other jobs so that they had at least an appreciation of what somebody had to do. But I see teams stuck in silos and working against each other all the time. What do you see in that, and how do you deal with that?
I'm in the process of writing a new book called People Problem Solved. 300 people I'm interviewing for this book. Yesterday, I interviewed a guy, and he was telling me a story about a company that he worked for, and they had a marketing department and a sales department. And then in between those departments, they had a tiny department called pre-sale, and the software company's job was to do demos. So the marketing company would do all this marketing and send out all these messages about what the company sold. And then the salespeople would make promises for things that didn't exist, and they would fight back and forth all the time. But who was in the middle was this pre-sale company. So they would get on the phone with the client to do the demo, and the demo would say, well, your marketing says you can do this. And they say, yeah, it doesn't do that. And then the sales team said it would do this, and they would have to say, yeah, it doesn't do that either. So they had this 3-department fight going all the time. I mean, the story was funny in hindsight, but if you're that company, it's not funny at all. What you just described, having people work cross-functionally, is one of the best ways to not just develop an appreciation for the other person, but to develop the main piece of a people-first culture, which is empathy. So imagine how many people they lose because they make a promise they can't keep, and the demo person has to say, I can't do that. And then everybody points a finger at the pre-sale team and says, we lose sales because of them. Whereas if they all just worked together and they all knew what each other did in the job and they had to walk in those shoes for a mile, that would develop empathy, which would in turn help them collaborate better. Cross-collaborative work is good, but if you really want to start making a change and break down silos, have team goals that cross silos too. So you're not just judged on what your team does or what your department does, but you're judged on how well you do that with other departments and other people. When you start adding that to performance management, people will start doing it.
Sales will promise anything to get the sale. When you're out there and you're trying to close that sale, you find out that their resistance to your salesmanship is always high. Most of the companies that are going to be watching this are going to be smaller companies, and they really don't have employees for an HR department or HR situation. So they're relying on people like you, or they're going to be looking to their PEO or somebody like that, telling them what to do. What are your thoughts about HR systems, having it talk to each other, trying to figure out how to fix it without it being messy, inefficient, and frustrating?
One of my favorite words for small companies is PEO. There's a good combination of PEO and then a workforce consultant like me. And PEOs offer those same types of services sometimes. So if you find an all-in-one, that's obviously a good way to go. As far as HR systems go, there are opportunities for even small companies with 10 or 20 employees, something like that, to have systems like a performance management system or a communication system, but they don't necessarily need to have a full HRIS system or talent management or any of those things. Technology is one of those things that's really based on the company itself, and the solution could be something as simple as PEO and what they offer, and it could be as complex as an Oracle or a Workday or something like that, where it's a really big HR platform that actually requires IT support. The one thing I will say is never buy more than you need with HR systems, and don't think that spending more money will fix the problem. It's important to get an expert and then be purposeful in your decision making so that you end up with a product that provides a great candidate experience pre-hire and a great employee experience post-hire, because ultimately the HR software is about two things. One, it's about staying compliant with laws in an automated way. And two, it's about making your employees feel welcome, wanted, and important. Paychecks do that. The ability to go in and make changes, to choose benefits, like all of those things make an employee feel welcome, wanted, and important. So choosing the right HR system is incredibly important to help businesses thrive.
What would your to be remembered statement to be about Peoplyst?
We solve people problems that get in the way of business success. If you have a people problem that's standing in the way of your success, call us. We'll solve it for you. The number one thing you can do when you're small is be hyper vigilant about hiring the right people, because the right people will help you get there so much faster. And so really concentrate on knowing what you need, and you have to study, you have to look, you have to sit down and put it on paper, and don't just say, I need a salesperson. Why do you need a salesperson? If you hire a salesperson and they do a good job, how are you going to fulfill the orders that they bring in? Like really sit down and map all of it out on paper. I'm happy to help you with that if you want to reach out to me, but really sit down and diagram out what you need before you start hiring, and then decide what characteristics you need, what your values are as a person and as an organization. And then once you have all of that stuff together, then you can go out and make your first hires and make sure they're the right ones.